So even though Purim is over, it's difficult to run away from Purim. And I had one more thing to say on Purim. So I wanted to keep it going. And actually it's very timely because, it says, "HaChodesh asher nehapach lahem miyagon lesimcha." It's actually a whole month that was transformed into happiness. And so that whole story with Haman has a lot to do with the whole month of Adar, which we're still right in the middle of. And also the whole notion of what Haman wants to do to us is not just something that is historical, because every day we're supposed to remember Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek. It's one of the shesh zchirot, one of the 6 remembrances for every single day. To remember, to be cognizant, to be mindful of what Amalek wants to do to us. So when we take a look back at the story of Haman and why we celebrate Purim in general, it looks like it's really something historic. Like, it's very important. It's got a lot of historical significance. There was this fellow who picked on us for no reason, wanted to just annihilate us for no reason, and Hashem saved us. And it's a very powerful message always that Hashem saves you no matter what. Hashem's going to save you and you have nothing more to fear. But other than the nationalistic side of things, meaning in the broader context that Hashem saves the Jewish people as a nation, there's something much deeper and in a sense more relevant. And I'm saying that because if we look at it as a historical thing, well, there's anti-Semitism, so then, okay, I got it. There's anti-Semitism, and so if you go through your day and you don't watch the news, most of the time, most of us will not experience anti-Semitism, especially not the way we live. And once in a while, you'll see it. And of course, if you look at the news, every little event that happens suddenly becomes the biggest event in the world. And of course, we know there was a Holocaust, Hashem Yishmor, but for the most part, it doesn't affect us. But it does, because that little Haman actually enters into our head. And you can see it actually very clearly in the Megillah, which I believe we discussed, that is that Esther can't make her point in front of Ahasuerus. She goes inside, she risks her life to go in, and she gets inside, and what does she say? She's like, okay, all I want is come to a party. And then he comes to a party, and then she's like, yeah, okay, what do you want? Whatever you want, I'm going to give you. And she says, well, come to another party. Well, what's with all these parties? Why can't you just say what you want? Because she was scared, in a certain level. She wasn't ready yet to face Haman. In other words, Haman was not just outside, he was inside. So there's a little Haman that resides inside of us. And when we understand who he is and what he's trying to do and how he works, we have a little bit of more power to overcome him and to fight him and to win this battle. The Gemara, when it's talking about describing Haman's goal, has the following story. It says that Haman was like a bird on the beach, beach sand, and the bird builds these beautiful castles. Like you go on the beach and you build a castle. So it's great, building these wonderful castles. And every so often, the sea decides to bring a wave. And this huge wave comes over. And all my hard work, gone. Nothing left. And so when this happened a couple times, the bird got really mad at the ocean. And she decides, you know what? I am going to dry up the ocean. No more ocean. I'm going to defeat the ocean. So the bird goes and decides to begin the process. How do you do it? She flies out to the ocean, puts her beak into the water, fills it up with water, and takes it onto the dry land and drops it over there. Then she takes sand in her beak, goes back to the ocean, and drops it over there. And she keeps doing that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it seems like a hopeless exercise. And so is the analogy of Haman trying to destroy the Jewish people. What it means is essentially that Haman is trying to build a castle on the beach. He's trying to build himself, right? To build something. You know how we humans, we like to build equity, right? We like to have assets. We like to know that what we own is ours. Like you look in your bank account and you see $1 million and you're happy. And one day they just close the bank. Now you're like, oh, where's that? And we like to, like people like to make money so they can have for retirement. It's like an interesting thing that we do. We work towards this goal, but life is like a little nothing. It really is. And the question is, what are we really working towards? So, in the world, we solve this problem. The Gentile world solves this problem. The secular world, how do we solve it? We're going to make materialism ascribe more importance to materialism. How so? There's a bunch of tactics we use. One is, we're going to show you that the world is not like a little nothing. The world is actually 4 billion years old. Maybe 14 billion years old, or however many years. What's the goal of that? The goal is to enhance the materialism. See, it's important. It's been around for a long time. And there used to be these giant animals, these dinosaurs. See, it makes it big and large and overbearing so that you'll buy into this. It's the same idea as when science has this clarity, absolute clarity. Different discussion, because I know it's a very hot topic when you bring it up. But who goes around whom? So in science, it's very clear that everything goes around the sun. Obviously, right? And the reason for that is because the sun is the sun is a powerful star. It is 170 times, I think, the size of the Earth. So it's huge and massive, and clearly everything goes around the sun. To say that everything goes around the Earth is pretty much saying the same as do you want to change a light bulb, twirl around the room, around the light bulb instead of twirling around the light bulb. Of course, different conversation, but they don't have any proof of it based on the theory of relativity, but different discussion. The point is that why is it important to say everything rotates around the sun is to ascribe power to materialism. All this designed so that a person can work in this world and can feel strong and grounded in their life. So even though your life, we have to accept, is very short, but at least you want to build a nest and feel empowered. That's what Haman is trying to do. The trouble is, every time the sea comes and washes away everything. And the sea represents the Jew. So a Jew represents Hashem, represents God. And the moment you're aware and cognizant of God, it's like, oh, so it's all nothing. Like the earth is only 5,700 and something years old. That's it. Everything rotates around the earth, and life is short and nothing. But you could do Torah mitzvahs in this world. And so it's unbelievable because that gives you power. But that means that your materialism is nothing. So your assets are not really material, they're spiritual. I don't want to hear that. So that's Haman's anger and frustration. And he decides to drown out the ocean. So what's the drowning out of the ocean? Well, I'm going to get rid of all that water. Now, what's the problem? If I would have said to you, I would have just explained to you this Haman's goal without the analogy of the ocean. I'm going to say to you, Haman wanted to kill the Jews. Can't explain to you why. He just had this thing. He hated Jews. He wanted to kill them. And Hashem told him, Chitzai kalim v'hem einam kalim. My arrows will finish, but they will never disappear. So Hashem loves the Jews, and no matter what, Hashem will take care of the Jews and they will stay forever. Did you understand that? Anything you didn't understand? It's fact of life. It's history. It's who we are. What are we gaining by the Gemara giving us this analogy of the ocean? So now there's ocean, wanted to dry the dry land and whatever, and now what? Now you understand it better? Okay, it's very nice. In fact, sometimes in the analogy, I actually begin to identify with the bird. I'm like, poor bird. So sweet. Oh, the bird's Haman? No, not so sweet. But it looks like a very naive bird, and so you identify with a weak one. He wasn't so weak, he was very strong and powerful. But what are you gaining by using the analogy of the ocean? Got the question? You could have just said, Haman wants to destroy the Jews. Hashem said, no, and you can't. I love them no matter what, and I'm going to keep them going. What's the analogy of the ocean? That he wants to drown out the ocean, and he can't dry it out. So now that's what Haman is. When we take a look at this analogy, we'll understand Haman's thinking. What led Haman to believe that it was even possible to destroy the Jewish people? After all, didn't Haman know, well aware of what happened with the Jewish people? He knew Jewish history. Why? Look at the story. The story is that he made this lottery, and he goes through the months of the year. So he started with the month of Nisan. He pilpul, right? A lottery. Which month? Nisan. He says, well, we can't do Nisan. Why? Yetziat Mitzrayim. He knew that Paroi was decimated. So right there, he went through every month and he saw how everyone was destroyed. But start right there with Paroi. You knew about Paroi. So why are you attempting to mess with the Jews? What's his thinking? What we want to do is get such clarity on Haman's thinking that we'll actually, in a sense, buy into it. If you and I start thinking like Haman, then we'll begin to understand what Haman was thinking. And you'll see that it's actually quite fascinating, maybe even scary, that we believe the same as Haman. In other words, where is Haman? Not there, but here. Inside your head, inside your heart. Once you understand what the goals are.
Maybe he just wanted to finish the job that his forefathers, the Amalekim, started after Mesa came out of Mitzrayim.
Absolutely, it's what he wanted. But this is a question about him and Amalek.
And it was right after they went through Yam Suf, and
right.
That's where the bird with the ocean. And
but it makes no sense. Oh, you're saying the Yam Suf, right?
They are connected. There's not
okay.
One thing to another.
Well, let's jump in and see what it is. So, there was a Fabrayan, a Purim Soda, on Purim Tafshin Chavdal in 1964. By the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And then he discussed this Gemara. And he asked this question. And I just look at these things. If you look at the times, the 1960s was really, in a sense, the beginning of the age of rebellion. That's what the 60s were. And a lot of Jews were throwing off the yoke of Judaism. That's what the 60s are more known for. It's fascinating. My daughter was showing me a picture of women. They are demonstrating for women's rights. I don't know when the picture was, 100 years ago, 50s, whatever, I don't know. And they demonstrated for women's rights. She said, look at what they're wearing. All of them are dressed like very, very modest. Like, it's amazing to watch, and you're like, hey, that's interesting. Like, they're protesting for women's rights, but they're very modest in the way they do it. That's not what happens nowadays. Things changed drastically. And things changed for the Jewish people drastically. And so, here's the question. Do you believe, when you see a Jew, and you see a Jew who's absolutely, totally secular, that Jew could come back? You know, you see kids nowadays, and you see they're so, like, they're angry, but they're out there. They're totally not part of the Jewish people. And you see a lot of lost Jews. It's actually incredible and unreal to see when a Jew comes back. Like, most Jews did not come back. Fact is, most Jews assimilated. That means they marry out, and once you marry out, your kids are out. It's interesting how, I don't know, I don't know how true it is, but I think much of the leftist movement today in Israel, etc., what it really is one generation away or two generations away from having been religious. There's very few who are like generations, I think. I'm sure there are some, but many, many generations. Because after a few generations, disappear. Like, how many of Moses Mendelssohn's, the founder of Haskalah movement, of his descendants are Jewish today? I would imagine not too many. So, yeah, it's difficult, and it looks like it's a lost cause sometimes. And Jews are just finito. But there's fascinating experiences you have with Jews. Like, I was sitting with this Yid once, in his, 50s, maybe. So he was describing him and his son had a bris on the same day. His son was 1 year old, he was 23. They arrived from Ukraine to Israel. When they arrived, like right away, within a few days, he arranged, I need to have a bris. And he had a bris with his son on the same day. I guess he couldn't party too well at his son's bris. And when I asked him, like, how do you do that? How does a secular Jew who grew up with nothing, zero Judaism, nothing, and you get out and like right away you have a bris, how do you do that? He says, I was never secular.
What's the difference? It's secular and angry or negative.
Yeah.
There's definite difference.
Yes.
Perspective.
Yes.
So
But he says, I was never secular. I was ignorant. No one ever taught me, no one ever taught me about Judaism. The second they taught me about Judaism, I was like, of course I want to know. In fact, I always felt Jewish in Ukraine. I was called in school a Žid. So I knew that part. I just didn't know what a Židin do. The second I discovered it, I'm like, of course I'm in. It's amazing that. Now, the fact that so many others don't have that is a problem. But the fact that there's one Jew and there's every so often you see it, it's amazing to watch. You know, on this Purim, my good friend, who's a retired lieutenant of the NYPD, so I always call him up and I said, come hear the Megillah. So he's like, okay, I'll be there. Then, no, I can't come. I'm busy. So I'm pushing to come. Finally, we had an event in Kids in Action with single-parent kids, and about 10 o'clock, he shows up. I said, okay. I read the Megillah for him. And my 12-year-old son was sitting with me, and I said, do me a favor, every chapter, at the end of a chapter, just explain what's going on. Do you know what it's like hearing Jewish words, Hebrew words, when you don't understand one word? So every time there's Haman, I said it out, because that I'm sure he knows what that is, and he's screaming, whatever, that's clear. But he sat through the whole Megillah. Okay, we did it in 20 minutes, but 18 minutes, but he sat through the whole Megillah and listened to the whole thing. And that's a miracle. And the next day I try to get him to come, he says, no, I have to work. I'm like, come on, it's Megillah. And your daughter, she has to be in school. And I'm trying to convince him, I lost that battle. He didn't come, and nor did she. And it like makes sense. Jews are lost. So here's what Haman says. There is a story, an analogy that was told once by Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, of course, you lived a few hundred years after the Purim story, but the same analogy applies. Rabbi Akiva was asked by Papus, how could you learn Torah? When you learn Torah, what's going to happen to you? They're going to kill you, the Romans. And in case you think Hashem is going to protect you, he says, the Romans, Hasha'am misacheket lahen, they're having this, it's their time.
Good luck.
They destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, the whole temple, there's Asara Arugim Malchus going on, they're destroying the 10 martyrs. Don't mess. Rabbi Akiva, how could you learn Torah? It's pikuach nefesh, it's life and death. Do you remember what Rabbi Akiva told him? He told him a story. Remember the story? He told him the story of the fox and the fish. Here's the story. Fox is once on the riverbank, sees the fish running, scurrying, swimming like Meshuggah up and down. He says, fish, fish, what are you guys doing? They say, the fisherman wants to kill us, wants to catch us. So he says, oh, I got an idea for you. Come here to me on dry land, get away from the fish's net, from the fisherman's net, and you'll be protected. And then when the fisherman's gone, jump back in the water. And the fish look at him and they say, aren't you the smartest of all animals? Oh, fox, don't you understand that we are able to live in the water? The second we're out the water, we can't live and we can't survive. Rabbi Akiva says, we Jews are like fish in water. Ki hem chayenu v'orach yameinu. The Torah is our life. If we have Torah, we're alive. If we don't have Torah, we're dead. You are correct that there's a fisherman, the Romans, who are trying to catch us right now. But we don't have a choice. We cannot escape the water. A Jew outside of the water is a dead Jew. God forbid. If a Jew detaches himself from Torah and mitzvahs, he's dead. So I don't want to be outside the water. I need to be inside the water. Right? So he says, okay. He was caught and killed and put to death. But he's like, I don't have a choice. What should I do? There's no option. I can't run away from Torah. And now we can appreciate Haman's thinking. A Jew needs water, right? If a Jew is outside the water, what happens to him? He can't live. So Haman says, the Jews are not in the water anymore. Until now, historically, the Jews were always in the water. Haman says, I'm going to prey on the Jews who are not in the water. He brought up before, right? Amalek. Who did Amalek attack? Who's that? That's all the ones who were outside the cloud. There was a cloud in the Midbar which was covering over them. If you're outside the cloud, Amalek attacks you. Haman says, let's attack the Jews who are not protected by Hashem's presence. They're not in the water. What happened was, at that time, all the Jews had detached themselves from Hashem's protection. It was a very, very, very difficult time, because at that time, the Beis Hamikdash, the first temple, was destroyed. It was a 70-year period. So Achashverosh made a feast. Actually, he made the feast because he was celebrating that the 70 years were gone, though in his calculation and not coming back. So that's it. Hashem left the Jewish people. So what happens? The Jewish people were invited to a feast of Achashverosh. And what did they do? They went. The feast was kosher. So the issue was not non-kosher food. The feast was 100% kasher. What was the problem? The problem was, it was a feast of Achashverosh. And they were nehenu miseudato shel oto rasha. They enjoyed the feast. What does it mean to enjoy the feast? It means, if you're a Jew and you're in Golus, okay, so you're in exile. When you start to enjoy the exile, and you start to take pleasure in what's going on, then you've bought into it. See, until that point, the Jews relied on Hashem. Achashverosh says, guys, I'm with you. I'm here. Right? No problem. Remember that line? It was 1993. And the Prime Minister of Israel, Alav Shalom, may he have a lichtige Gan Eden. He got up on the lawn of the White House, and there's this image of him. And like a whole worry, he didn't want to shake hands with, right? Because you don't shake hands with murderers, a person whose hands are full of blood. And, and he did. And then he announced, the words that he said were, Lo yoter am levadad yishkonu bagoyim lo yitchashav. He says, we were a nation who was am levadad yishkon, a nation on our own, and doesn't reckon with the Gentiles. No longer are we an am levadad yishkonu bagoyim lo yitchashav. Henceforth, we're like a nation among the nations. We are an accepted people. That's the basis of the state of Israel, by the way. Part of the problem. You think that the Goyim accept you as a nation. They don't accept you. You never become a nation among the nations. And that's what Haman prayed on. As soon as we were invited, we felt, oh, look, the Jewish people. Look, we're invited. It's great. Haman says, so they're no longer in the water. If you're not in the water, I can attack. Now I have the power. Part 1. Part 2, Haman says, I want everyone to bow down to me. Did they bow down? Everyone bowed down. Every single one of them bowed down except for Mordechai. So you would think Haman should kill Mordechai. No. He's like, you see these Jews, once they get in, they decide, right? So you see that really what they are is like Mordechai. But they all bow down. So once they bow down, he decides to kill Mordechai. That's because Haman's thinking was very simple. Haman says, when a Jew is in water, I have no power over him. But if a Jew is outside the water, now I have all the power to attack him. Now I can get him, right? So this whole Farbrengen was about how Jews, when they're in the water, are protected by Hashem's presence. When they're outside the water, they have no protection, and that's difficult and tough. And so Haman can attack you. What it seems like is that everyone here is good, right? Anyone not in the water here? We're all in the water. Present company, seems, I think, goes to learn Torah and, does mitzvahs, and it's great. So we're good. So we're talking about them, those Jews who are out there, and those Jews Haman could pray on. Can he pray on you and me?
Absolutely.
But we're in the water. What does it mean to be in the water?
We pray on ourselves.
What?
We pray on ourselves.
Oh. So let's understand what it means to be in the water. We need to take it a step further. Let's understand. Well, what does it mean to be in the water? See, Haman has a plan. His plan is, if I can attack Jews who are outside the water, that means a Jew who's assimilated, who's no longer protected by Hashem's presence, is easy bait. Can't stay Jewish. If he's in Hashem's presence, forget it. What do I want to do? I'm going to lure him out of Hashem's presence. Come with me. So I'm going to create a setting for the Jews to come out of Hashem's presence and not to be protected by Hashem. What does it mean to be in the water? And what does it mean to be outside the water? It looks, straightforward. Are you doing Torah or not doing Torah? It's actually much more than that. The Rambam says, Rambam in Hilchot Mikvaot, in the laws of mikveh. So the laws of mikveh are all about how you immerse yourself in a mikveh, in water. When you're immersed in the water, how much water is considered a kosher mikveh? 40 sa'ah. Why is that? Because that's the amount of water that's going to fill you up. Your whole body is going to be in the water. If you have it, you're in the water, immersed. So the Rambam, at the end of each piece, he has like an allegorical piece. He explains things, b'mishalim. And he brings an analogy, and he says, okay, so you're enveloped in the water, and you're surrounded by the water. He says, a person needs to be enveloped by the water of Hashem in a figurative way. The water is mei hada'at hatahor, pure knowledge of Hashem, and you want to immerse yourself in this water. The water is the presence of God in your life. Now ask yourself a question. Are you immersed in the mei hada'at of Hashem? What does it mean to be immersed in Hashem's presence? It means Hashem is everywhere. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hashem is everywhere. When you feel that, you're immersed in His mikveh. When you don't feel that, you're detached. It's not about being assimilated only. Assimilation is a very subtle thing that takes place inside each and every one of us. When you're walking around and you're feeling Hashem, you know what you're going to feel? Hod v'hadar lefanav, oz v'chedva bimkomo. You'll feel the glory and majesty and beauty and simcha, happiness, the might and the rejoicing which are in Hashem's space. When you are in Hashem's space, you'll feel absolute simcha. It's like, wow, Hashem is right here with me. You have those moments. But then there's those challenging, difficult times when you don't feel Hashem's presence and you feel scared. And now you're outside the water. You can feel outside the water. Ki heim chayenu v'orech yameinu is the Torah. But the Torah doesn't mean I learned my Torah today. It's living with Torah. What is the message of Torah? Torah means that you're all the time enveloped in Hashem's presence. So every single moment of your thinking is, okay, what does Torah say I should think right now? And then I download that and think that. We get all the time into a space of feeling abandoned. And when you feel abandoned, what are the feelings that happen in that space? All the negative feelings. You feel sad, you feel depressed, you feel scared, you feel anxious, you feel grieving. All those negative things. Reishit Goyim Amalek. Amalek is the beginning of all the nations. The nations are the 7 nations, the 7 emotions that are inside a person. Emotions gone wrong are controlled by Amalek. Amalek says, I need to pull the Jew out of the cloud, out of the water. I need to make him detached from Hashem so that he feels separated from Hashem, and then I can attack him.
Well, the rabbi is saying that a Jew could still be in the water and be just as you're literally living a Torah life.
No.
But you're like
one sec. You could be, being in the water is not just being from.
Right.
What does it mean to be from? It's a birthright. What is it?
Right.
It means it's hard work. It means every moment of your day to work yourself to a space of feeling Hashem's simcha. So whatever happens, it's like what we always discuss about, okay, I'm feeling detached right now. I'm really sad. I'm feeling really sad. And then you're like, okay, and Hashem gives me a hug right now and He's with me in this space. And when you work through the feelings, so you feel the sadness, and then you say, Hashem, not that you're going to make it better. Hashem, you're with me right here. And I notice that you're with me and I feel your presence in this moment. And if I can do that, that is called bringing Hashem to my space now. He's not answering my questions. He's just giving me a hug in my problem. And that's so critical to be able to do. That is how you immerse yourself in the water. That's litbol b'mei hada'at hatahor. To immerse yourself in Hashem's da'at. And it's really hard. It's very tough. When you're immersed in that space, Haman has 0 power over you. Haman has no control. What does Haman want to do? He wants to take you out of there. He has no other goals. All he wants to do is get you out of those waters, right? That's why the word Haman comes from the nation of Amalek. Who's Amalek? The Amalek is the nation. Reishit Goyim Amalek. The word Amalek is Malak. You know what Melika means? Malak? Maze Melika?
Shechta with fingers.
Exactly. When you slaughter an animal on the front, that's called shechting. When you go on the back, special thing they did in the Beis HaMikdash for certain times, it's called melika. Amalek attacks you on the back. Cuts a person's head off on the back. That's how he does it. A Jew is panim befanim diber Hashem imachem. When we were made into a Jewish nation, we spoke to Hashem panim befanim, face to face. You know what it means, face to face? We see Hashem everywhere. That's your work. Wherever you are, you're in Hashem's panim. Can't see God right now? Okay, why not? So notice why not. Notice what you're feeling. And then notice how Hashem takes you over right there. Panim befanim diber Hashem imachem. You and God are one and attached in this very moment. Amalek says, turn around. Let's cut the back so that we have achor. So we're facing the back. Because if you're facing the back, what do I have now? Now the Jew is not seeing God's presence in this very moment. And if you're not seeing God's presence in this very exact moment and very space, what are you seeing? You're facing the back. So if you don't see the front and you're just facing the back, at this moment I have control over you. That's Amalek's goal. His goal is to take control over you.
So many things nowadays are like Amalek, trying to pull us. I see with my kids also. Like just now, my son was watching a hockey game. The feeling of needing to go to shul was so hard for him. Like, but then I'm gonna miss. But then
right, and he's not even doing anything wrong. He's not even doing anything wrong. There's nothing like just watching some sports. But the attack on your neshama is
able to overcome
constant.
it. And my husband said, let's say none of us were home and he was alone. Would he have been able, as a 16-year-old, to just say,
Right.
you know what, I'm going to miss this amazing game and go to shul?
Exactly.
Who knows? I don't know. We have
Exactly.
to hopefully bring him up.
That's all Amalek needs to do.
Right.
He needs to just show you other things. Nothing wrong. Just show you other stuff. And then you just fall into that space. And then you just detach yourself slowly and sway away and get away from Judaism. And that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to pull you out of the water. That's the whole mashal, right? He says, without this, you don't understand what Amalek wants. His goal is take him out of the water out, put him in dry land, and put the dry land back in the ocean. And it looks like a futile exercise. But when you understand what he's doing, you feel it on your own self, you see that's what's going on inside of us all the time. And that's why we get to the space of negative thinking. Yeah?
I just want to say, I'm just thinking, Amalek, you can also say, kal, kalut rosh. You know, he brings
Yeah.
into you the kal.
Exactly.
Same letters.
Not
kal.
just that, but the rabbi was saying that the bird was actually taking the water out of us. So
Right.
it's not really like taking you out of the water. They're actually trying to take the water, the Torah, your life.
Well, detach you from it, yes.
Right. I'm
Exactly.
saying not like it
Exactly.
can't take you from it, but it can
Right.
take.
Where does it begin? Where does it begin?
The Yevanim try to do
Same idea, yeah? But Haman min Torah minayin. Where does it say Haman in the Torah?
Amin ha'etz hazeh.
Hamin ha'etz. In other words, Adam and Chava went and ate of the tree of knowledge. Before they ate of the tree of knowledge, they were not wearing clothing. Did they know they were not wearing clothing?
No.
They did know.
It wasn't.
Just didn't matter. Right? Now, you can't do that. At least adults can't do that. Ever seen 2-year-olds?
Yep.
Very well aware that they're not wearing clothing. They're proud of it. And they walk around, yeah, and they're having fun. And you're like, but you're not wearing clothing. You're like, yeah, so. And it's really innocent. Why is it innocent? Because they don't know any way better. And so it's fine. It's perfect. That's what Adam and Chava were. They were adults, but they weren't. They were little kids. But they really wanted to get to know. They wanted to feel that. Because they felt like, you know, we want to know ourselves. We want to become big. So they ate the fruit. That eating of the fruit, that's Haman. Hamin ha'etz. Hashem looks at them and he says, Haman ha'etz asher tziviticha levitzi achon mimena achalta. You ate the fruit. That's the Haman. That's luring you away from Hashem's glorious, wonderful, beautiful presence. And they ate the thing. How'd they eat it? It's called da'at. They got to know the world. So they go, yeah, the world's quite interesting, fun. Yeah. Hockey games, whatever. Yeah. Just innocent. It looks good. And that's what happens to all of us. That da'at, that eitz da'at, is where Haman pulls you out of the water. As soon as you get out of the water, what happens? Now you look around and you're like, hey, I want to be successful. I want to be happy. I want this. I want that. And as soon as you've trapped into the I want, that's Haman got ya. Got him out the water. They're no longer feeling Hashem's presence. What does a Jew want to do? He wants to feel Hashem's presence. So you'll say, okay, so that means I shouldn't be successful in life. It's not about my success, it's all about Hashem. So forget me, let's all think about Hashem. I don't want to think about Hashem. I love Hashem, but I want to be successful. So, I mean, are you telling me I shouldn't be successful? I should be all the time immersed in Hashem's presence. That's like saying you should be a cookie cutter. You shouldn't be yourself. You should be only what Hashem wants. No, it's not saying that. It's saying that if you want to be really, really, really successful, you know how you get really successful? Stop thinking about yourself. The more you think about yourself, the more difficult it is to be successful in everything. Try raise kids where all you're thinking about is, oh my gosh, they're going off. Or try make money when you're looking all the time around to see, am I making, am I not, am I working, yes, no. You need to just let go. When do you succeed? When you stop thinking about yourself. You can see it when you do something when you're involved in a project and you don't have time and you sleep 4 hours a night and you don't even notice and oh, wow. And then you see amazing things happen because you're not thinking about yourself. We can't get away from this thinking about ourselves. The eitz hadat is, ever since that chet eitz hadat, it's imbued, it's part of us, it's who we are. But the question Hashem looks at us is, just notice that's Haman. That's all you got to do. All you got to do is every time when a negative feeling comes into you, you just notice, okay, here it is. Here it is. Now, we say, I'm feeling stressed because I just lost my bank account. That's why I'm feeling stressed. There's no bank account. So I'm stressed. What do you want? It's not me, it's the bank account. No. If you're feeling stressed, what you want to do is just notice that you are feeling stressed. You are feeling that. So you want to get in touch with your feeling. Know what you're feeling. Feel your stress. Feel your challenge inside you. And go right back to a space of Hashem is there. Didn't answer me, but He's always taken care of me. Always will take care of me. And in this moment right now, I know Hashem is right here. It's about your ability to keep on saying and screaming out loud, Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch Leolam Vaed. It's not me, it's Hashem as King. He was, will, and is. And that's the difficulty over here. But when a Jew gets into the water, back into the water, Haman has no power over him. Still got the fox and the fisherman over there. You got some other issues, but not Haman. Not the negative thinking. And Haman's goal is to just push you out of the water. Shouldn't be in the water. Because if you're not in the water, Haman has all the power over you. So the story is a story of ourselves. It's a story of our lives. It's a story of a person who gets to the space that something inside you wants to kill you. We Jews are supposed to be these beings who just immersed in Hashem's love all the time. We never get away from it, ever. No matter what happens to you in your life. How many times did something terrible happen to you in your life? Chas v'shalom. And looking back at it, years later, you look back and you say, you know what? I really grew from that experience. It really helped me and made me into a better person. I would never have been as good a person as I am without that experience there. And so, thank you Hashem for giving me that experience. Every single moment of your life is actually like that. And when you start to realize that and to work that, Hashem becomes a part of you. Amalek has to be remembered every single day. Because the Yetzer Hara's got this, doesn't really have any power. All you need to do with the Yetzer Hara is just notice him. Just pay attention. It's like, there he is right now. What's he telling me now? He's telling me that, he's telling me a story that I should feel guilty over whatever's going on right now. I shouldn't be happy. And you notice the feeling. It's amazing to watch yourself. If you just take a bird's eye view, like get out of yourself and just look up from above, look down at yourself and you say, okay, this is what I am, this is what I'm feeling, fine. Watch how things change. It's unbelievable to watch it. Because we Jews are really in the water. And that's Hashem's promise to us. Hashem says to Haman, everyone's tried to get them out the water. So in a nationalistic concept, everyone's tried to destroy the Jews. There's no way that the Jewish people are still around today. It makes absolutely no sense. Impossible. There's no way. Right? Even in the last few years, just looking at a Holocaust on one side, with assimilation, put Holocaust in the middle in Europe, assimilation in the West, in America, and communism in Russia. And there's no way for Jewish people to survive. Guess what? We're having a shir right now. We're still learning Torah. We're still here, right there. Hashem said you'll never get rid of them. Hashem says it's not just never get rid of them in the assimilation sense. It's Jews are always connected to God. So even when you are worried about them and you see that we just, it's so sad. It's so difficult to see our heads are just hijacked and our hearts are hijacked. And that's the root cause of all the mental health challenges that we have, all of it. It's just because we get detached from Hashem. And all the time, Hashem says, the mashal is the water. All you need to do in the analogy is get back into the water. Start looking and seeing that just like by Matan Torah, it was panim befanim diber Hashem imachem. Hashem was face to face with you. You're face to face with Hashem every single moment, every single experience, every single little thing that happens to you is divine, is God. And all you want to do is like stare that truth in the eye. And so you overcome your midah and you say yes, and you move right back into that space. And that space is just glorious simcha. And when you're in that glorious simcha, Haman looks, he says, nothing I can do. And Hashem promises that I'm there for you all the time. Chitzai kalim, vehem einam kalim. So there's a message you want to take away from Purim and from Haman. It's that Purim is not just one day a year. Haman's attacking you every single day of the year. And you got to remember that story every single day of the year. And once a year, we get into the zone of Ad de lo yada. What's Ad de lo yada? Haman is Etz Hadat. He wants to get you into the dat, to know. And the Jew says, I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm above dat. Ad de lo yada. Ben Ahu Haman, le Baruch Mordechai. I don't know. But all I feel is that Hashem, you're right in front of me. You're right here in the space. And that's the embrace. So Hashem is hugging you and making you feel in His space all the time. You know how you hug someone? When you kiss them, it's a frontal. It's face to face. How do you hug? You go to the back. And you grab the back. And you say, I'm with you in the back. Haman says, when you look at the back, Kol ha-nechashalim acharecha are the ones he wants to get to. The ones in the achoraim. That's when you fall into all the worries of the world and you're lost and you're finished. It's achoraim. And he says, come here. Come here, Yidara. Hashem says. Gives you a hug. An embrace of Hashem. The back. He says, see the problem? I'm not taking away the problem. It's scary right now. It's tough. And I'm right there with you. That hug is enveloping you in Mehadat Atahor. It's immersing in Hashem's presence. When you immerse in that presence, amazing what happens. The results are all the negativity, all the negative emotions fall away. And you just feel the beauty of Hashem. Because when you're happy and when you're ecstatic, your kids feel it, everyone feels it. You just like, you create this light. You see people who live in this. If you have a problem, put yourself in the light. Say, Hashem is right here in this presence. And start thinking how amazing it is to be with Hashem and how unbelievable. And get yourself into that dreamy state. And think about whatever you want to think about. And watch that situation change because you thought about it differently. Because you got into the water.
Thank you. Amazing.
Well, that's why actually the 50 amot is 50 is Shari Bina. So the 50 amot is hung on. There's 49 levels of there, and then the 50th level is Shari Bina. Yes.
בהגדרה של בישל בא מתבשל.
Yeah.